he's a missionary to Panama. He's been part of this body for many years, but he has just really a gift of evangelism, of just telling people, and I think it's just so fitting that he's scheduled today because he's going to stir our hearts. Come on, take it away.
I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm going to be gone for like all of these days, like the trash off and August 6th. Yeah, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be down in South Texas at a church there, and then on the baptism weekend, I'm going to be up in Pennsylvania. We're doing a conference up there, and I'm really, so I'm kind of bummed out. But I am very excited and very honored to be able to be here this morning. It is such a blessing. Most of you don't know me, so I decided this morning whenever Pastor Jeff asked me to speak, I was like, okay, what should I do? Should I teach, or should I talk about missions? And so we decided that, and speaking with Pastor Jeff as well, we decided that with, you guys are talking about discipleship and reaching people and evangelism, so I decided we're going to go with missions this morning. We're going to do something a little bit different. Before that, though, because I know most of you don't really know me or anything about me, I am just going to share just a little bit about who I am and kind of give an introduction to my family. I've got my wife over there, Carmi, and my two boys, Elias and Lucas, and also my friend Tommy, who is extended family as well. Now, just so you guys know, Tommy Cook over there, he grew up in this church as well. We went to youth group together when we were you were 12 and I was 13, when The Rock was still there. We went to youth group here together. And then I moved overseas and he moved to Japan with the Navy. He was there for 6 years. 6 years, right? And he got back not long ago, and we kind of reunited, and it's been really awesome. So I grew up in this church. My parents moved out here, and I've always been here. That you guys are my family. And I've been here through several name changes and several pastors, but at the same time, it's still this body. It's still this family. You know what I mean? It's such a blessing for me to be able to come back here and to be able to share a little bit. Pastor Jeff said we're missionaries in Panama. I've been a missionary since I was 16 years old. I was actually prayed for right here by the elders of this church, and they gave me a Bible, and they sent me out. My grandmother was a missionary. It was all I ever wanted to do, except for maybe be a firefighter. But the big thing was being a missionary, and they prayed for me right here, sent me out, and I went to Minnesota, of all places, and did my first training through Youth with a Mission. And then I went to Scotland, did my secondary training. And then I went to Turkey, where I lived in Istanbul for 2 years. And those 2 years were incredibly formative in my life. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I'm going to show you guys some stuff here in a minute. I'm just giving you a real brief recap, right? Those 2 years in Turkey completely formed who I am as a person and as a minister, because there we lived. Turkey is 99% Muslim. We're living in severe persecution while we were there. People are getting martyred, and we're getting death threats and bomb threats and all this kind of stuff all the time. And it was a very intense 2 years of my life. And then I ended up going down to Central America to a place I had never heard of called Panama. I didn't want to go to Panama. I wanted to go to Mexico because I met a missionary in Denmark. Some of you may have heard him. His name is David Hogan. And I met David Hogan in Denmark at a conference, and he invited me to Mexico, and then everything fell through, and I ended up in Panama. And I don't even really know how that happened. But I ended up there and have stayed for 15 years now, something like that. And down there in Panama, we work largely with tribal groups. There's a group there called the Nobe tribe. They're about 250,000 people. They are the largest tribe and poorest tribe south of Mexico in Central America. And we've planted 9 churches there, baptized thousands of people, just all kinds of awesome stuff. God has done, it's amazing. I could go on and on about the stories. I love the testimonies about the girl in the white pants at Walmart and stories like that, because it makes the gospel real in our lives. It goes beyond theory, because most Christians live in theory. Most Christians hear the sermons, they read the books, all this, it's just theory. They've never really experienced it. But there's something about whenever you see God move on your behalf, when the Holy Spirit speaks to you and you watch it happen, it changes everything. And we've been able to experience that for years and years now. Every kind of circumstance you can be in as a family. My poor kids, man, and my wife, they didn't sign up. They were just born into the family. right? I mean, and you don't know what it's like when you're with your children on an airplane and the pilot says, we're probably all going to die, we're going down, and you're sitting there with your kids and everybody's crying and you're like, well, this is it, guys. Yeah, I mean, we've been through that, and it didn't go down. We were okay. It was miraculous. It was seriously miraculous. And you don't know what it's like whenever you're sitting in a village in the middle of Panama, sleeping under a banana tree, and you got witch doctors all around you blowing shofars at you, cursing you, wanting you to die, and you stand up in the middle of the night and you run out and say, come on then! And they all run off because they're chickens. That's what they do. They're cowards. They hide in the darkness and all that. They sneak into our front lawn and bury coconuts full of ashes to curse us. In the middle of the night, we're trying to sleep, and they're sneaking in our backyard. They're just sneaky, sneaky people. I don't like it. So anyway, I live down there. I still live there. You guys have seen us here for several weeks now, well, months now. We come and go a lot. But we're working on getting my wife's green card right now, her U.S. citizenship, because we were with Youth with a Mission for 16 years or so. My wife was the vice president of YWAM Panama. I was one of the directors. I was one of the main directors of Frontier Mission Coordination in Central America, which means that I did the training for new missionaries to go into unreached people groups, which we'll get into in just a second. And I spent a lot of time training people and going into places. And whenever I preach on like a Sunday morning, I'm just like, you hear me talking fast because I have to blast through this stuff. Because usually in my world, the way that I do things is I usually teach conferences or schools, and I'll speak for 3 hours a day for 5 days. And so I get to go really deep into subjects. So whenever I get like a 45-minute block in a church, it's like, okay, we're going to condense everything down, which means you guys are just getting like a fire hose to the face for 45 minutes. All right? So prepare yourselves because we haven't even started. I'm just giving the intro of who we are. So if you take notes, you better get your hand warmed up because this is going to go really fast and you won't get bored. I can promise you that because you won't have time. There's going to be so much stuff going on. All right? So I'm trying to get, okay. All right. So lived in Panama. And then back in 2016, God just kicked open doors for us. Like we didn't even ask for it. I honestly thought that I would be in YWAM until I died because I'm good at it. Like that's what I did. We were established. We could have easily lived in Panama. I mean, someone gave us a piece of land down there. Somebody gave us a house and a truck. Actually, this church gave us a truck that we still have down there, four-wheel drive truck that we can go up in the mountains, and it's awesome. You guys should come out sometime. Give us a truck, and then another church up in Wisconsin gave us it was like a 1/4 acre of land for us to build another house on, not just so we could have lots of houses and be like, hey, look at this, but because we lived in so many different places in the country, we needed different places to stay. We had everything. And then God just literally within about a 2-month span changed everything, and we ended up stepping down from YWAM, from everything we were doing, and stepping in to direct a ministry that we had started a couple years before. It was like it was a nothing. It was just nothing. Like it was just supposed to be to process funds to send out some money to China every now and then, some unreached people groups, to direct Found Ministries full time. And we've been directing Found Ministries full time since 2016, and that's what we do now. And the ministry has gone from, we were doing some missions workshops and stuff here in the area and overseas and places, and buying bicycles for pastors in China, to now just God just making it happen organically. We're now in 9 nations, and we are in some of the most closed, unreached places on the planet, and partnering with people that you'll never hear their name, you'll never see a book from them, you'll never see anything from them, and they're the most incredible people on the planet, and we get to be there with them. And so we're going to do this a little bit different today. Here in the background, I'm going to have a video rolling, starting here in just a minute. A video is going to go the whole time. All right? So there's no sound. That's on purpose. So just please don't be like, hey, there's no sound. All right? There's no sound. That's by design. Instead of slides, we're going to have video, and I'm going to be going through these videos. Like this whole thing is cut up into like 3 to 5 minute blocks. All right? So most of the stuff you're going to see, you will never see publicly or in our Facebook page. I know this is being streamed, so some of it's a little bit edited for that purpose, but you won't ever see this on our Facebook page. You won't ever see names. You won't ever see half of the stuff on here because half of the video you're about to see is illegal, what we're doing. I get away with a lot of it personally, even though most of my friends have been arrested. Most of my friends have gone through all kinds of things. But I have discovered that I am blessed with being an incredibly average-looking person. And it was really frustrating when I was a teenager and I couldn't get a girlfriend because I was so normal looking and I don't stand out at all. I actually never had a girlfriend until I met my wife. That's how normal I am. And I'm so average looking that I can go into anywhere and people think I am like a cousin or a friend. I'm telling you, like, all the time now, I'll be somewhere. Like, this just happened to me the other day. I'm just making it different. But someone came up to me. People will come up to me all the time and be like, hey, didn't I see you in that squirrel eating contest in Oklahoma? And I'm like, I don't think that was me. But, no, you got in 5th place, and walked out in shame. Nobody noticed. And I'm like, probably. I don't that's me. Like, everyone thinks I look like somebody that they know, so I can go anywhere and nobody notices me. And it's wonderful. I used to be real mad about it, but now I understand why I have this gift. Because I can go anywhere, and I can tell you crazy stories of where, like one particular case in Turkey, we got attacked by the Muslim extremists came and they started attacking everyone, broke all these people's faces and bones and stuff. And then the riot police come and they arrest all the missionaries. Like 100 missionaries, arrested them all, and they just walked right by me. Didn't even see me. All right, I'll see you guys. I'm not joking. Seriously happened multiple times. And I can just get away with anything because nobody notices in these countries. Even if my skin is a different color and I'm the only blonde-haired kid around, I just fit in for some reason. We actually had one of the funniest stories, and then I'm going to start this here. This video, we were on a bus in Costa Rica, and we always hit these checkpoints, right? You have to show your passport and all this. Police came on. My wife is passport photo challenged, and we're on this bus, and the police come on. This is how well I blend in. They take my passport, my U.S. passport, and my 2 boys, their passports, look at them. All right, you guys are fine. Take my wife's passport. My wife clearly fits in Costa Rica. And they took her passport, and they look at it, and they're like, who's this dude? And my wife is like, that's me. And they were like, no, this is a guy. And they're like on the bus, like, who is this guy? Anybody? And finally we convinced them, and we all had a good laugh. And she didn't, but we laugh. We still laugh about it. And I tell that story as often as I can. Okay, so everybody ready? I need you to buckle up, click, because this is about to get really intense here in a minute, and this is going to go really fast. All right? So if we can go ahead and start the video here. This is a very condensed missions crash course that you're about to get because we're talking about reaching the world. So, very quickly, this map here, you'll see there's red, there's yellow, and there's green on this map. Each dot on this map represents 50,000 people. Whenever you see the yellow color, those are called unreached people groups. The term unreached people groups mean any people group that where 2% or less are Christians. So yellow is all the people groups that are 2% or less. Red is where they're unreached and there is no missionary activity happening. So you can see there are massive areas of land where there's nothing happening. The white areas, people always ask about that. That's because there's nobody there. There's deserts and jungles and things like that. Okay? So you can see, and including here in the United States, because of immigration and all that, you have an incredible opportunity to reach unreached peoples here. All right? So this is what we're looking at. Whenever I'm talking over the next few minutes about unreached people groups, this is what I'm referring to whenever I say unreached people groups in these different locations. These are our target locations. Right? Now I'm telling you these kinds of things because I want you to understand that there are people like the Wiwa tribe here. This tribe, all of these videos here I took, so these aren't like stock photos or anything. This is me. Right? The Wiwa tribe there is in Colombia. It's a tribe of about 13,000 people, and they have about 10 Christians in the entire tribe. It took me 6 months just to find the first contact to be able to go there. We go to this place, and they live in constant persecution. It is legal to be a Christian in Colombia, but illegal to be a Christian in their tribe. So we go up to these mountains, and as a matter of fact, the family that you're seeing here, you're seeing their back of their, everybody in the Wiwa tribe wears all white and they have all long hair. Right after this video was taken, that family was actually arrested by the tribe because of their missionary activity that they do as Christians, And they were put under house arrest and would never be allowed to work or earn money again, would have to completely depend on the church or other believers to provide for them for the rest of their lives, unless they gave their youngest 1-year-old daughter the witch doctor to dedicate to the gods, to the witch, whatever their gods are over there. And so we get to go to these places. We are the only missionaries working with these people. They don't have any scripture in their language. We are currently working on a Bible project. We're not Bible translators, but we are translating the Bible in the sense of they tell the audio narrative versions of the story as if like you were to tell your kids the story of Jonah. We are then recording it, putting it on solar-powered radios so that they can then take it into their tribe and play it in whenever they have storytelling gatherings when they get together. And there are tribes like this all over the world, and there's nobody working with them. God just opened the doors. We just found out about this tribe. We'd never even heard of them before. And they're an hour flight from us in Panama. So now we work with this tribe, and we have people all over the world, Wycliffe, the Wycliffe Bible translators, trying to get into tribes like this. And they're everywhere. Now, the whole point of this is the word missionary, for those of you who don't know, the actual definition of the word missionary is a person with a religious mission. So we can go to all these places, all these tribes, but in the end, what it comes down to is you called here in this church, to this community, to the families in this area, you are missionaries. It isn't all about going out. See, these photos, these are what we do, right? But I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that you as a church, what Pastor Jeff, what you guys are doing where you're giving 10% of your tithes towards missions, this is what it's going to, this stuff right here. This church, for almost 20 years that I've been a missionary now, has reached tens of thousands of people around the world just through our ministry, just through our family. That's not counting all the other missionaries. And we have all these open doors. I mean, when we first arrived here, this is still Colombia. These are the churches and the soccer fields and stuff where we work. Just here in this area, when we went here, we got in a taxi, and the first thing the taxi driver said to us is, "What are you doing here?" We said, "Well, we're here to work with one of the churches." And he said, "Foreigners don't come to this area. There's so many rebel groups and so many kidnappings here. You're taking way too big a risk to come to this area." And we stayed anyway. And we stayed there, and we've actually been several times now. And the churches are so open to work with us. I mean, these are public schools everywhere we get to go. So this is the 1040 window right here, this map. The 1040 window is actually where the majority of unreached people groups are. Over 80% of unreached people groups in the world you actually will find there in the 1040 window. Believe it or not, there are 3.6 billion unreached people on the planet. So there's, 6 billion people in the world. 2.2 billion are Christians, and then 3.8 billion are unreached, and then you have the others they're like nominal, like they're in the middle. You know what I mean? So this is the 1040 window, and this is where we largely focus most of our ministry. And I'm going to start talking about these different countries now, like Turkey. I mentioned Turkey before. Turkey is 99% Muslim. So 1% are either Christian or in the middle or something else. And when we go work there at the very top up there, there's Russia, and then the top. We work here, and because I lived there for 2 years and then I've gone back. The original team that I worked with is still there. Now forgive some of the quality of these videos because we don't have, this is real life. So we're like having tea. These are Syrian refugees who have lost everything. We don't know anything about them. And we go into their house, and what we do is, because most of them are not, but some of them are extremists, and they get really mad when you start talking about Jesus. So we go in with microchips, and that go in like your phone, and we'll go in and we'll have tea with them. We give them clothing, we give them food. We fed thousands of refugees there now. And at the end, after we've spent 45 minutes, an hour, by the way, this is modern-day Ephesus. If you read the book of Ephesians, this is what it looks like today. And so we go in there, and we'll have tea with them for a while. We'll talk. And then afterwards, we give them this chip and say, "Oh, here," it's a microchip, and say, "Oh, here's a gift for you. It's got some videos on it. You can watch it on your phone." And then we leave, and they'll put it on their phone, and up pops the Jesus film in Turkish or Arabic, depending on what language they speak. We have the mix of them. And we have tons and tons of those chips now. The people donate, and these missionaries here, We work with them a lot. That was my original team. They're still actually right after this video here, they were kicked out of Turkey, and they were it was amazing. They're from New York. They were removed from Turkey. Whenever I left, the next day the U.S. ambassador was arrested because, like I said, nobody notices me. And so the U.S. ambassador was arrested, and then all these missionaries started getting kicked out of Turkey and arrested and put in jail and all this. They miraculously were able to just be removed from Turkey. They didn't get arrested. They were just escorted out, basically. And they, instead of coming back to New York, they decided to go to Iraq. And they're in Iraq there now, and I actually invited Cade, for those of you, he plays up here. I invited him to go with me later this year. We're going to Iraq for the first time to do some things that I can't mention with people I can't talk about. But it's going to be a really intense, really awesome trip, and just be praying for us on that. We're still working on details. So this is whenever we would so whenever we would go in here, you're watched all the time by police in these areas because it's not legal to go. It's actually in Turkey, it's considered a terrorist activity to help the refugees. There's so much genocide that you don't ever see on the news, but they will kill thousands of Kurds anytime they get the chance. So we have video of just bombs going off, of just them just bombing refugee camps. And so we would go to these grocery stores and we would buy just fill up a car. And we would do this every single day that we were there. And people would, the police or security guards would come up to us every single time and say, "Why are you guys doing this?" And we would tell them, "Well, we're having a big party and it's going to be great. And so we need lots of food." Or we would always tell them that. And so they'd be like, "Oh, gotcha." And so we take all the food, and we would just drive down here, and you can see we would just stop in a place. We put the food in trash bags so that we didn't get, it just looked like we were giving out clothes or something like that. It didn't look as suspicious. And there's food in there, but buried in that food is Bibles in Turkish. And so we would give them to people, and you can see these are Kurds or gypsies. They would hear there's food, and they would just start running. And we could only stay in a spot for about 5 minutes. Because after about 5 minutes, there would be so many people around the car. Actually, one point, it was one of these parts here, we're like trying to drive away because there were so many people swarming the car. And then what happens is you get some of the more extreme people. They come, they start yelling at you and throwing stuff at you because they realize, they'll open it up and realize there's a Bible inside. Because as soon as they see that there's Christians giving stuff out, they start looking through it. And they'll throw Bibles at you and tear them up and all that kind of stuff. So as soon as we started seeing more intensity happening, we would try to drive off. We would have people jump inside the car and lock themselves in the car with us and say, "We're not leaving until you give us more food." And it would be very, very intense. And so this is what we do. We go out into these places. And here's the thing, guys. This kind of stuff, like you can do this here. Right? I mean, when you do the trash off, when you do all this kind of stuff, you're doing the same thing. It's all ministry. It's all telling people about Jesus. It's all going beyond theory and going into reality of who Jesus is, who the gospel is. It's all real, right? This church is doing this. That's what I want you to realize. What you're looking at here is not just some people that you don't know, some random, this is you guys. This is what you're a part of. So it's amazing what God is doing in all these different places. Our plan eventually, and I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes here, is our ministry has grown so much over the past 2 years that we're in too many places. We can't sustain the amount of ministry that there is because there's so much ministry. There's so much potential, so many possibilities. We actually want to start training people to go out long-term into these locations. We want to start sending teams into these different countries to establish long-term works because a lot of these places, there's nobody else. Whenever I lived here in this area, there's 2 million people and like six of us who are missionaries for 2 million people. And a lot in Turkey, right now, there's about 70 million people in the nation, maybe 5,000 Christians in the nation. And you try to go minister. Oh, actually, let me cut this off here. This right here, this is Cappadocia. If you read about this in either 1st or 2nd Peter, whenever Peter said to the saints scattered throughout Cappadocia, this is Cappadocia. During the Roman rule, after the apostles, when the persecution was so extreme, the Christians came and made cities, hand-dug out cities in the mountains. There are thousands of miles. Those are houses that Christians used to live. Christians lived in these houses in hiding until the early 19th century. 1900s, guys. And we actually, you can't see it here, but there is an entire city 5 stories underground. And we got to go into it. The 4th story is a church in the shape of a huge cross. No windows. It's 4 floors underneath the earth. And we got to go into these places. There are still people living in these. We got to sleep in these caves. It was amazing. And this is what Peter's talking about. The saints were scattered, and they didn't get to go and just live in any situation. They went and lived in caves and rocks. That's why the Bible says the world was not worthy of them, because they had to leave. That's what the hero chapter in Hebrews, that's what it's talking about. These are where our family used to live, in these places. And still many do. As a matter of fact, every day 300 Christians are killed for their faith on average, most of them in these locations. So the gospel is something people are giving their lives for every day. And we're starting to see a little bit of it here in the States, but it's everywhere. And it's been everywhere for a long time. And it's very hard. So this is Thailand. Thailand is another unreached nation. Only about 1% are Christian. They have multiple tribes there. It's one of the most amazing places you can go and do ministry, because the government is so open to outsiders. We work with a ministry there, which you'll see up here in a minute, called Beautiful Feet. And the guy who runs Beautiful Feet, his name is Pat. And he was a businessman. He's from Thailand, but he was a businessman here in the States. And he was very successful until he got saved. And then he sold everything he had, used the money to go back home to Thailand, buy a piece of land. He bought this farm. This is the Karen tribe, by the way. They're only about 10% have ever heard the gospel. And Pat bought this farm, and he brings in ex-cons to his farm where his wife and 2 daughters are. He has dozens of boys who come in and live with him. And it is supernatural, the success rate that he has had with these boys. They come in completely addicted to heroin. I had coffee with one of them because he trains them to be baristas after he gets them saved and off of heroin with no medication. His drug rehab program is during the day, make them work in the farm. If they get chills, they go work in the water in the lake, because he has a pond there, And then if they're feeling cold, if they're feeling chills, they work in the fields where it's hot. And if they're feeling hot, then they go in the water. And then at night, they do Bible studies every single night. That's his drug rehab program. And all of them, he said so far, there's maybe been one out of hundreds of boys who has fallen away from the gospel after that. And they are so on fire for Jesus now. And these are people he has been so successful that he actually now, the Thai government has given him access to all of the 9 northern districts. He has completely free access to go into the prisons and do whatever he wants. I sat down with some of these guys. They're so saved. I was sitting with one guy having coffee, and we're talking about Jesus and how awesome Jesus is and everything. And I'm like, so how did you come to the Lord? And he goes, well, I had killed 6 people. And the police found one of the bodies up in the rafters of my house, so they sent me to prison. And then they didn't know what to do with me, so they sent me to Pat. And then Pat brought me to Jesus. These are the kinds of testimonies that you see in Pat's ministry. And it's been really awesome because we've been able to work with him. Even the hospitals now send Pat. We actually got to go out with him one day. He's not a doctor at all, or a nurse or anything. And he's been so successful in everything that he does that God just blesses him. That's actually Pat right there in the top corner. If you saw that guy in the street, you would never even think he was a Christian. But look at this guy. That's him. He just is a regular dude. And we have so much fun with him. And they send him out, and they're like, we want you to go check on our patients and let us know if we need to come visit them. So our ministry we're a small one, so we bought some medical equipment for just small stuff, like blood pressure cuffs and stuff, so he could learn how to use it, so he could actually go visit these people and be able to report. Because we were going and praying for people, and that was awesome because people were getting healed. But then the doctors were like, so what are the results? And he had no way to measure whether to send doctors there or not. And so this is him. This is where they have their Bible studies every night. All of these people are convicts, and they just come there, and they're with his wife, his daughters, himself, and they're all there in that one piece of property. No security, nothing. They just worship Jesus. And Pat only talks about Jesus. You can try to talk to him about something else, but he's going to bring it back to Jesus. He's one of the most incredible men of God. And this is one thing I have learned over these years as being a missionary, is that there are people everywhere. Everywhere. It does not matter how persecuted it is. It doesn't matter how intense the situation is. It doesn't matter how many people are getting hurt or arrested. God has somebody there. Just like whenever Elijah was, he's like, I'm the only one left. And God said, no, there are actually 8,000 who haven't bowed to Baal. That is how it is, guys. Like most of us, we see on the news and everything, it's all doom and gloom. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, the United States and Europe are really the only places on the planet where the church is not growing right now. There is revival exploding everywhere else, all over the planet. It is exploding everywhere. It is incredible. So don't believe all the doom and gloom stuff. God is on the move. I mean, all these people, these are all, except for, there's a church team there. Like the little kid didn't do anything. But everyone else, though, those guys, they did some bad stuff, all right? And we got to go there and baptize these people. And that's not me either. That's an older guy. But we go there and we get to baptize people. And God is moving everywhere. It's incredible. In this nation, only 1% have heard the gospel. And this one guy, because he took some risks for the sake of the gospel, now has free access all over Thailand to reach people. And he's just doing it with his wife and himself and a few missionaries who come and help him every now and then. That's what it comes down to, the lady with the white pants in Walmart, right? It's just stepping out. And then God can do incredible things with you. The Bible says signs follow believers. If you don't go anywhere, the signs aren't going anywhere. They're not going to precede you. Most of us are like, God, send me a sign. That is not how the gospel works. You want signs, you got to go to Walmart, and you got to take the step of faith, because it will not happen if you just sit there hoping it will happen. I promise you. So this is Nepal. This is how we got to church. We drove in a Jeep for 6 hours, and then we sat on top of this big yellow school bus for 2 hours, which sounds really fun until you realize you're sitting on those metal bars for 2 hours and driving through these bumpy rivers, and then your tire explodes and you have to get off and put it on again. And this is how we got to church. And then we had to climb a mountain for an hour. And it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But everyone you're seeing in this video, they're risking prison for 5 years to be here, to be in church, just to go to church. Any of them can go to prison. And yet, one of the most incredible things, again, don't know their names, don't have books, don't have anything special, but almost all of the pastors that you see in this video have raised somebody from the dead. They have, and they'll tell you, the miracles that have happened. Most people think of Nepal and they just think of Everest and climbing mountains and all that goofy stuff that has no eternal value. But they don't ever think about the fact that around the Mount Everest, all around it, there are countless villages where no missionary has ever gone to preach the gospel, ever. Since the beginning of the fall, and people inhabited that place, nobody has told those people about Jesus. And there are a few, just a handful. This is the misconception about missions, guys. There are 2.2 billion Christians in the world. So people think, well, there must be just this army of missionaries out there. The truth is, there's 2.2 billion Christians. There are only 100,000 registered missionaries on the planet, and only 1% of those go to these places, go to unreached people groups. And we could even go into the finances, which I won't even spend time on that, but there's about $45 trillion going through the hands of the church every single year, and only 450 million of that is going towards missions, this kind of missions. That's 0.001% of all church funds goes to reach these kinds of people groups. That's $1 out of every $100,000 in the hands of the church. So when you guys make a commitment to start tithing the church funds towards ministry like this, you're part of a 1% group. It's absolutely incredible. It's something you need to think. I actually thought, because I see all those biker gangs with the 1%er patch, I was like, I want to get a bunch of those made and just hand them out to people here in the church that have 1%er patch. Like we're part of the 1%. We're 1% who go, and we're the 1% that support that. I'm telling you guys, it's not a small thing what you guys are doing. These kinds of places, look at this church. This is a church. This is their church. This is where we went to church. We sat on the floor. There's no utensils, so we eat everything with our hands. You're climbing mountains. There's nowhere to bathe. You can't take a shower because to get water, you have to walk an hour down the mountain, fill up a bucket, and walk another hour up for water, for one bucket of water. Thankfully, because of supporters like you guys, we were actually able to buy a water system, a big old tank that they were able to use to start pumping water up to the top. So that one church now has water now. That's one of about 20,000 new believers that have been reached there in Nepal in the past year. And God is on the move, guys. There are so many people getting saved. Some of these pastors, all they do all day is baptize people. That's all they do, because there's too many people getting saved. They're constantly needing to build new churches. Again, Nepal, 1% have heard the gospel. There's 30 million people in Nepal, and 1% have heard the gospel. What happens in the mission world, and I'm just going to let you guys know this because you're 1%ers, right? In the missions world, whenever you go on websites or read books, if you're one of those people who do that, like me, and you're looking up unreached people groups, there's one thing you need to know. In the missions world, they'll tell you that when a people group is 2% or less, like I've said, is considered unreached. But what happens, and this is a travesty, in my opinion, is once somebody crosses the line of 2%, they're then classified as reached. So you can have 50 million people, 2% have heard the gospel, so now they're classified as reached, so they take them out of all the books, off all the websites, and then nobody knows they exist. And then the missionaries will pull out because they'll say, congratulations, pat themselves on the back, we just reached this group, let's go on to another one. And you get left with people like Nicaragua here in this video, people groups that we call them low discipleship groups, where on the books they're classified as reached, which this is actually, Nicaragua is technically one of the most Christian nations you can go to in Central America, but because the amount of missionaries that pulled out, so what happens is a missionary group will go for two, maybe 5 years if they're awesome. They'll get all the decisions, do some basic discipleship, and then leave. And you end up with so many new believers who haven't been properly discipled, don't really understand the gospel. And I have been in many of these places. You go into the pastor's house. Now, this is no fault of the pastor. He doesn't know. He can't read. He can't write. And the missionaries didn't stay long enough to teach him. So you go in there, and the pastor will be praying to Jesus and reading his Bible and have bones hanging from the ceiling to ward off evil spirits. These are low discipleship areas. So we work in these places as well, where they're technically Christian, but there has been very little true discipleship that has happened. And you'll find all these pastors, because like I said, they can't read or write, and many of them don't have scripture in their language. They have to read in Spanish, which is a secondary language to them. So then they go into it and they're trying to understand. They don't understand how to really seek God. They don't understand the presence of God. They don't understand what that's like. So they go into these places and they're like, yeah, whenever Noah was fighting against David, against the Goliath, like you hear the craziest stuff. And we have heard it. You go out in we've been out in these places. Oh, this is how we get to church there in Nicaragua, in the back of a cow truck sitting on plastic chairs. It was great. But you go into these places, and I mean, there was one of our teams that went out there, and the people would not let them into the village because they were convinced that the team was looking for the murderers of Christopher Columbus and thought that they might be in that village. So the team had to sleep outside the village in the jungle. I mean, this is real. This is real stuff that happens. We have all kinds of wild miracles, all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, we've had hospitals get completely healed. I mean, I had one of the most amazing things for me personally, I tell this all the time. You know, I was at doing a crusade in Panama. They brought in this lady who had broken her ankle, and it was like the size of a grapefruit. And I went down and put my hands on it to pray for her, and it shrank back and completely healed right in my hands, right in front of us. I mean, we've seen God do so many things now. So many. Actually, this party right here, this was on the news in Guatemala. This is in Guatemala. This was on the news because it was the Christmas party for 2017, and we invited all of these kids. We went door to door and invited children, and we were expecting, I can't remember the exact numbers right now, but we were expecting there to be like 75 kids, and 150 kids came, and we have the receipts. We even have the video because we didn't know what was going to happen. Way more kids came than we expected. And God supernaturally multiplied the Christmas toys. And we put all the kids in a line. Every boy got a boy toy. Every girl got a girl toy. And there was still toys left over on the table. It was impossible. We were all standing there like, what just happened? And they're amazing. We've had that happen about 4 times now, usually with food. God multiplies food a lot. But the amazing thing is that I've learned miracles are often so normal looking that you don't even notice that they've happened if you're not paying attention. Most of us don't. God will do some of the most supernatural things, but because God often speaks in a whisper, he'll do something and you don't realize what just happened. And so we wouldn't have noticed if we weren't paying attention here, because it's just kids got their toys and walked off. If we hadn't kept the records of how many toys we bought, if we hadn't kept the receipts, it's not all about being, just floaty, just, it'll all work out. It's important to be detailed and keep your records straight, because then you can say, God did this. It's like my wife had a tumor in her head and woke up one morning. She collapsed right next to me, started having little seizures, and she went to the doctor, had a tumor in her head. We have the x-ray, the whatever it is, the MRI thing. Our team prayed for her, went back 2 days later for another MRI, and it vanished. And it's never happened again. She's completely healed. But God would have healed her either way, with the MRI or not, right? But we only know it happened because we have the records. So anyway, I believe in that. I believe in being diligent in what you do. I've just gone way past my notes here. All right, we're almost done here. So this is just awesome. I love that. That was one of my favorite moments ever. And God has been so wonderful in allowing us to do some of the things that we've done. And we invite you guys. We take people with us. We not only just take teams, but we'll take very select small teams with us to some of these places that are more of the rougher areas to go to, because not every team can handle going and eating iguana faces, and stuff like that. And when I was in Thailand, they came and just gave me a bowl of blood. I mean, a lot of people can't handle that kind of stuff, so we're very selective about some of these places, but other places we're happy to have you come along with us. You got to be careful. Some people get real sick, and that's no fun. You don't know what it's like until you've been on a 12-hour bus ride, and you're all just like, oh Lord, please help us. You get so sick sometimes. It's no fun. All right, so we're going to do our last little bit here, and then I'm going to start closing out. I want to talk about Panama, because Panama is where I live most of the time. We work among the tribal people, like I said, the Nobe tribe. We don't have any fancy cameras or anything like the fancy GoPros, so it's usually our phones and stuff. So the only time we get really nice video is whenever we're in Panama and teams bring their cameras and then send us the video. So we have these teams that come up there with us to Panama, and those mission trips that we've had, they're really awesome, because we get to go up in the mountains among this tribe here, which the Nobe tribe is one of the most fun tribes that you can actually work with, because they're such a large tribe, but they have so much poverty. They have so much poverty in that tribe. Thank you. That when you get to go up there and you get to spend time with them and go hut to hut, go into their huts with them and get to pray with them and get to sit down with these tribal people, you get to experience something that very few people get to experience. Actually, because many of you don't know this, but I was actually a youth pastor here at this church when I was on a sabbatical year one time, and I think it was 2013. And the teenagers who were here, I would say a couple of them, not many of them, two of them, the youth group was 8 people. I mean, come on. It's a lot of them. All right? So 2 of them actually went down to Panama and spent 2 summers with us. And the whole summer, they lived in our house with us. They went out and did stuff, and they got to experience going out among these tribes. And it's amazing, because Panama is a very Christian nation. It's actually one of the safest. It's actually one of the places, it's a huge retirement location, because so many people go there because it's beautiful and it's safe. But you can still go out into these areas and all day, every day, find people who've never heard of Jesus before. They've never heard the name of Jesus. And you can go out there and they're sick and you can pray. We've had people, one girl with leukemia, she was dying and God healed her. We went into one of these hospitals. These are orphans. We go work at the orphanages here. And we've had, we go into a hospital and pray for kids and they get healed. And God does so much there. We had some of the most incredible miracles in the beginning happened because God was multiplying food in Panama and all these awesome things that God was doing. This was the foundation for starting where we went. But Panama has an orphan crisis, like many places in Central America. There are Panama is only 3 million people. So it's a small nation. You can drive from one end of Panama to the other in a day. And yet they've got 100,000 orphans in Panama. And it's almost impossible to adopt from Panama. There's only about one successful adoption per year because the laws are so strict. It's almost impossible. So there's a huge, huge issue with that. Now, to close out, because I know I went a little bit over, so I'm just going to close out here real quick. I'm going to show you one very short video here. This is done now. I'm going to show you one. It's about a 2.5 minute video. Next year, if you have a call to missions, right? If you've watched this, or maybe you're someone who, like, for years, you're like, I'm called to missions, but I don't know what to do. I want to invite you in 2020, February 2020, our ministry is running our very first missionary training school. And we're looking for people who will go into these kinds of places. We want to send teams into these nations to start out and establish long-term works in some of these places. And February 2020, it's going to be a 6-month school. It's going to be 3 months of lecture here in the States. We are still looking for where we're going to do it here in the States, and then 3 months in Panama on the ground doing missions of practice. So we're just going to show you this video, and that'll explain more.
The Missions Core course through Found Ministries is a 6-month missions boot camp for anyone called and that has a heart for missions. As a ministry, we focus on reaching unreached people groups, so this training is very much focused on going to unreached people groups, going to rural locations like Panama, like Nepal, like Thailand. The school consists of 6 months broken up into 2 3-month blocks. So the first 3 months is the classroom phase, and those 3 months are also broken up into 3 different phases. So the first month is focused on identity, on character, on you as a person, your calling, your gift, your passions, and developing those. The second block of the classroom phase is all about your overview of missions, right? We talk about mission statistics, church history, unreached people groups, how to go into these locations, language acquisition, all about legal stuff like visas, and how to simply operate in missions and get a general understanding of missions and how to operate on the mission field. Your third block in the classroom phase is all about leadership, because what we do as a ministry, what Found Ministry does, is largely pioneer. We go into places where there's nobody else working and we start new ministry. So it's all about how to go from absolutely nothing in ministry, from going to a place where nobody's been before and developing into a full-blown ministry, preaching the gospel in many different aspects on the mission field. We talk about teamwork. We talk about how to work with people with all kinds of different personalities and giftings. The third phase is all about developing you as a leader. After the classroom phase, we go on a 3-month outreach. Our 2020 school is going to be in the nation of Panama, where you're going to be working with short-term teen children's ministries, working in hospitals, working with tribal people all over the nation of Panama for 3 months, where you will get all of the on-field training experience that you need. So if you have a call to missions and you have a call to unreached people groups, come join us in Found Ministries in the Missions Core course coming up in 2020.
So that's the school. If you have a call or you know somebody who's called, please let them know. We've already started getting applications, which is amazing because we're a small ministry, and the fact that God is drawing people because there is a need out there. And the harvest really is plenty, and the workers